Hello and welcome to the Scuttlebutt Podcast, the podcast for current and former service members in pursuit of their higher calling. I'm your host, Brock Briggs, and today I'm speaking with Beau Higgins. Beau is a retired Marine Corps intelligence officer of 25 years and now works as a senior manager overseeing military talent and acquisition at Amazon. We talk through how to inspire leadership from every single person in a unit, even down to the most junior personnel. Beau talks through his framework for managing risk and balancing the necessity for field training with the requirement of comprehensive instructions. We close the conversation talking about how the culture at Amazon has mirrored that of the Marine Corps, getting comfortable with failing quickly, and tactics for successful job hunting coming from someone who, quite frankly, looks at a lot of resumes. Beau is incredibly passionate about serving others, and you'll hear that today. He puts out a lot of great career resources online, so be sure to follow along with him on LinkedIn. Please enjoy this conversation with Beau. I appreciate you tuning in today. Please consider leaving a review on whatever platform you listen on if you haven't already. And if you're new here, all I ask is that if you find value in what you hear today, please send it to a friend. What is the thing that you are the most proud about, but you don't ever get to or never tell anybody about?
That is a great question. I will tell you, one of the things, and I don't know if it's, I guess, it's probably a good answer for it. I'm proud these days as a guy that retired 8 years ago from the Marine Corps. I am super proud of the Marines that were in my command or that served for me with me that are still in and both continue to reach out to me to ask for mentorship and help and to see the progression of their command or their opportunities. And some that have gone into command and have done great things. I mean, that's something I'm super proud of, because I like to think I invested a lot of time um, in leadership and being a mentor and setting an example for the Marines that worked for me, and to see them be successful is so much more satisfying than your own success. And again, for my kids, I'm certainly proud of them, but they hear that, and I talk about that. I never really talk about how proud I am of the Marines that worked for me to see their success, and how proud I am when they ever do reach out to me and ask for, hey, sir, you've been, and they still are in. So it's like, hey, sir, how'd you do it when you were in command? And what are tips you had or things you can share with me? And that makes me proud that they learn something from me, probably some good, some bad. I think you take good and bad from all leaders, but that's something that I probably don't talk about much, but means a lot to me to see their success, after years after that I've been out of the Marine Corps.
Is that what you or how you would maybe define successful leadership?
To me, it is. I mean, to me, that is definitely. I mean, that's what servant leadership is, right? You're serving others, and I think, especially in this role at Amazon, as a guy that had a full um, career, 25 years, these days I get the greatest joy out of, I mean, certainly of hiring veterans, but from a leadership perspective, I get it from seeing the success of my team here. I tell my team all the time, and they're young. Like I'm 55, right? My team's all 20 and 30-year olds. This is their start of their careers, and I have no desire at this point in my life to be Jeff Bezos or be Jane Bezos or whatever it may be, right? But I really do take pride in seeing the success of my team and hoping that they believe me when I say, look, I'm here to help you. Like I'm not looking to win another plaque to put on my wall. I'm not looking to win another award. I've had a great career. If I went home today and did nothing, I could be proud. But if I can do something to open a door for you to help you be successful in your careers, to be, again, the analogy I make is like, let me be the offensive guard to block for you, so you can be the quarterback and the running back and score the touchdown, right? I want to give you those opportunities to be successful, and to see them be able to run through those holes and be successful is what really makes me excited. So again, similar to the Marine Corps piece and seeing those guys years ago that I did, it's the guys today, or the team today. I definitely something that I certainly still invest in, and I think it's been part of what has been part of me since, hopefully day one in my Marine Corps career.
That was going to be the next bit I was going to ask about I have a quote from you from your time in the Corps. It said, "If people remember me as someone that put others first and was a man for others, that would be a legacy I would strive to obtain." Does that mentality and outlook come from the Marine Corps? Or do you think that that was something that came from just you individually?
I can tell you exactly where it came from. It came from Jesuit High School, where I went. That is what we talk about at Jesuit High School, is being a man for others. And I say they beat that into your head, but it's just something that becomes part of your life. And when you're in high school, you don't necessarily appreciate it. Like so many things, when you're in the moment, you don't appreciate what you have when you're doing it. But when you look back on it and you see the relationships you had, the education you had, the foundational experience you had of being, for me, an all boys Catholic school, and having these priests there, these Jesuit priests that teach you to think and teach you to just appreciate what you have, but also try to be thinkers and to be that man for others. That's what their whole philosophy is all about. And again, I don't know that I was very good at it, or really embraced it fully when I was 15 through 18, and even in college. But I think as I got into the Marine Corps and was trying to find my leadership style, that is certainly, with one of, if not the most core foundation of what I always try to start with. If you do that, if you put others first and be a man for others, you can't go wrong. So yeah, it definitely started when I was in high school, 100%.
It seems to me like one of those things that really comes from, it's almost just pursuing delayed gratification. Kind of, I equate it to my background is in finance. And so you're always talking about like saving for later. And sometimes like that day never really seems like it will come. But were there points maybe in your career where it felt like, hey, it's time for me to like get something out of this? Or did you, I guess, maybe talk about a time where that fight of wanting the gratification of now
Yeah.
versus giving
Well, I think you can balance both, right? I talk always, and when I talk to Marines in particular to this day, like you want to keep every door open for your career. And keeping every door open means you need to do all the things it takes to be eligible for promotion, to be competitive for command, to have the best jobs. And so you have to be, I think you can be a servant leader and still be somewhat selfish, or at least driven. Maybe it's not really selfish; it's just driven to say, "Look, I want to be the best," and being the best doesn't mean I have to be, you know, an asshole. Pardon my French, but you can do that. I think you can do both. That's the balance. Can you be the leader that you want to be and also maintain the values that define who you are? So and again, if it's academic prowess, I mean, that's something that's really very much based on you and the work you put on. And I was able to kind of show that in schools I went to in the Marine Corps to be successful, right? um, from a leadership perspective, I mean, it's investing in time, investing in others. And if you do that, if you invest in your people and your people do well, your command will do well, and therefore you will do well, right? So I think it's easy sometimes to say I'm do it myself. And I know leaders, and we've all had leaders that said, and they were successful on the backs of others, which can be done up to a certain point. But at some point, the scope and scale of your command is beyond your ability to be there every day for every second to micromanage everything. So when you have to depend on others, you have to find a way to motivate them to be successful on their own. And if they're successful, it will make you successful too. So I mean, and if they're not successful, then you may not be successful. And that's your fault and your challenge the leader, I think. You're right. So you have to sometimes maybe adjust to that a little bit. But that's what I think. If you invest in the people, they will always, if people know you have their best interest at heart and truly, and show it, not just words, but we in Latin, I know at Jesuit high school I had to take Latin for 5 years. So acta non verba, right? Actions, not words. If they see your actions are really putting your money where your mouth is, they're going to put in the effort to be successful. And again, that makes, at the small unit level, those things are building blocks for success for your unit. So again, I think it all can be done in one way, helping yourself be successful by helping others be successful.
Another thing that I had written down that you had said before is that you believe that everybody should lead every single day. At a certain point, there are only so many leadership type roles and so many positions that can be filled in that way. How is it possible for anyone today, maybe in their workplace or maybe even specifically Marine Corps, military in general, how can everyone be a leader?
Leadership is there are opportunities to lead every day that we don't even think about, and it's not big things. It's not leading some massive, frontal assault in the military or amphibious assault, right? In Amazon, it's not leading, some huge effort to like start what Amazon Prime or whatever. I mean, it's about the example you set, right? If you see trash on the ground, pick it up. If you see an opportunity to help somebody out, help them out. Take an extra minute to be kind. I mean, that is leadership. It's leadership through the example that you set. Because as a more senior person, whether in the military or whether at Amazon, people are always watching you. And leadership is by what you do. It's sending little notes. It's sending. I write a lot of personal letters to this day. Those are little things that's leadership. That's not something that's out in front and I'm like beating my chest that I'm great. It's just things you do because it's the right thing to do. And that to me is leadership. And that's what resonates with people when you do the little things right, and like the Admiral McCraven speech, right? Make your bed, right? The first thing every day. If you're successful doing that, then things just kind of stack from there, right? And I really believe in that. Your actions, your just small actions you take, of taking time for people. When people come to you and have problems, don't say, multitask and do six things. Be in the moment, right? Be present when people are talking to you. That's leadership. That it's something little, but you also know when you can tell people are kind of like just want to be done and move on from you, right? And that's people see that and sense that. So being present, setting the example, I mean, those are the things that allow you to lead every day, in my opinion. It's not the big stuff. I mean, the big stuff is great, and there will be those opportunities once in a while to be the guy, carrying the sword on the horse and charge across the battlefield, but usually it's just the little things that matter.
I've always really struggled with the idea of what leadership is because every time it's pitched or somebody asks kind of the big question, what does leadership mean to you or whatever, there are always people are looking for this grandiose answer that talks about this massive decision. And like you just pointed out, it's not that at all. Like it very, very rarely. More often it's the sum of smaller decisions over time that, like you were just saying, speak to who you are throughout and kind of build that relationship with your subordinates or even people over you.
Yeah, I mean, it's muscle memory of doing the right thing over and over and over, right? Where you get used to setting the example in whatever you're doing, and if you once you start doing that again, it has a trickle down effect. Again, people are watching you, and they will do, and they will follow your example. If you set the good example, they will follow. They will set, if you set a bad example, they will follow that as well, right? So you can't say one thing and expect different behavior, right? Or you can't act one way and say, well, you can't do that, and that's what you see as bad leaders, are ones that have that double standard of, you can't do this, but I can do that. I mean, that's where the whole idea you hear from senior leaders all the time. Generals eat last, or senior leaders eat last, right? You let the troops eat first. That's little stuff that again makes a difference, and people watch and people see that. So again, you're right. It's not leadership is not the big things. The big things, you will be successful in the big things if you have the little things right. And the little things are things you can do every single day.
You spent 25 years in the Marine Corps, and so you have a very long history of learning these types of things and practicing them over time. How do you think that the Marine Corps instills that idea in its troops today? And this comes from a place of, over as I've been doing this podcast for the last year, taken a real keen interest in the way that senior leaders lead their troops. And there seems to be something very different in the water. Whatever the Marine Corps is drinking, uh, it differs in a very large way. And I think that it's seen in kind of the morale of junior people. So I'm curious what you think and how you think that the Marine Corps does that differently.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I think we Marines are very biased about being the best branch, and I think there's some justification for that. We're the smallest, right? So we do have a little bit of and I hate the word elite. We have this idea that we are special, and I think look, even the way we describe ourselves, right? If you talk to a Marine, every Marine knows the Marine Corps birthday, right? Every Marine calls himself a Marine. If you talk to people in the Army, they typically will say, "Well, I'm an 82nd Airborne guy, or I'm a 101st Airborne guy." Or if you talk to a guy in the Navy, they say, "Oh yeah, I'm a pilot and I'm attached to this ship." Their identity comes from their unit or their branch. In the Marine Corps, it's about being a Marine. You're a Marine. That's just how it is. So the institution itself, I think, has some ability to bring people together and have that extra layer of camaraderie that's built in from us from day one. I think a big part of it is obviously just the investment we make in training people, whether it be for the enlisted Marines at boot camp or the officers at officer candidate school. The more you push and the more you invest on the front end of the training to inculcate people into the culture and share the history, it becomes part of your DNA. And then, as you grow, I mean, I will tell you, to me, the Marine Corps is about getting, it's about getting a degree in leadership. You go to college, you get a degree in something. The military and the Marine Corps in particular is about leadership and how how you can build. I like to talk about building, adding tools to your leadership tool chest. So I think all of us, when we start, um, as Marine Corps leaders, you may only have a couple tools in the tool chest, a hammer and a screwdriver, and you see every situation and you act a certain way. But over time, it's about taking, using all the tools at your disposal to be successful as a leader. I think the Marine Corps is just, we want to, we really value the most junior, NCO, that fire team, and we empower them to be leaders, at a very, very junior level, right? That is also a huge difference, I think, from the Marine Corps and other services, where if you look at the Navy, right, you're not, and many times in the Navy, until you're a chief, you don't have much authority or responsibility, right? That's E7. In the Marine Corps, as a corporal, you're leading a fire team, and there's expectations placed upon you very early in your military career that you have to lead. You need to lead. You need to take care of your people. So it's giving people the opportunity to succeed or fail very early on, and hopefully giving them the tools to be successful. But I think that's part of it, is just our willingness and our necessity to empower Marines at a very young level, whether it be lieutenant or as an enlisted Marine, to have those opportunities to lead, then that will lead them, or allow them to grow into even better leaders, right? That's a big piece of it. That's, I think, different in our culture than others. I mean, look, want to see a great example of it? What's happening in Russia right now? No leadership at the lower level. The only people that are leading over there are colonels and generals, right? Again, you need to empower those Marines the lowest possible level to make decisions on the battlefield. The battlefield is crazy. So if you do that, there is risk with it, because a 22-year-old may make some crazy decisions sometimes, right? But I think that's the kind of risk gain analysis you have to do of what is the right thing. I think for the Marine Corps, it's invest in those young people, invest in their training, and let them go. And if it can be, that's a cultural difference between us and other services in many ways.
I remember so many examples of exactly what you're talking about going through A school, and because we were in a mixed class with Marines and Navy going through aviation, and the amount of respect that was even just afforded to senior E3s was like nothing that I had ever seen. And even going out into the fleet, like, and getting out away from the Marines altogether, there really isn't that respect for anything until you are an E7. You're just kind
Yeah.
of like, you're just there. And I think that that causes a lot of problems with almost the ownership of the branch and your job. And I really admire that about the Marine Corps.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, like I said, I did 3 cruises with the Navy and spent a lot of time with the Navy over time. And again, as a guy that was a SIGINter, my training was with the Navy as well. And I think the ownership piece. I think you're spot on about that. It's ownership at a young age, ownership at a junior rank that we put that on you. Whether you can handle it or not is up to you. But that's the expectation that you are going to be able to do that. And it's interesting because ownership is something we value at Amazon too. So again, it's always interesting to me when these skill sets of the military and how they translate over into the corporate world. That's something we stress here. So interesting. But I think you're right. Ownership is a big deal, and we push that down to the junior level as possible.
Other than maybe a young corporal that's 22 years old making a really poor decision in the heat of things that maybe could happen to anybody, are there any other drawbacks to the ownership and empowerment that's given to junior troops?
I don't know there's anything wrong with it. I don't know there's any drawbacks to it. I think it's you can't you can't pass on responsibility either. I think there can be a sometimes maybe you can if you're not a good leader, you can push down decisions that should be your decision, right? I mean, I think you don't want to be that's a lead that's what a leader has to figure out, right? What's a decision he has to make and really needs to make, or what's a decision that can be pushed down to those junior folks. And I think if you are able to push those decisions down to junior folks, you can't when they make that decision, you have to be somewhat patient in their decision making process to give them a little bit of rope and just say, "Oh, that's horrible. What are you thinking? No, I'm going to do it this way." So you can't like break their morale if they make a decision that isn't exactly what you want. If you want them to grow, you have to put them in a position where they are empowered to actually make a decision, and maybe you can tweak it a little bit, but don't just reject it out of hand. I think that's sometimes what we see is, again, there are those leaders that are so risk averse, they want every decision held up to them, and every decision has to go through them becomes a bottleneck. That's the wrong way to do things. You have to push the decisions down. You have to trust those leaders that they're going to make the right decision as best they can, because that's what's going to help them grow into be leaders later on. So I don't necessarily see there's anything wrong with it, unless there's other leaders that again, I think there are some leaders that don't want to be held accountable for anything. They just like, I'll push it down to somebody else because if it goes wrong, I can blame somebody else. Whereas a good leader, even if they make a decision that goes wrong, you're the one that holds that responsibility, right? So if it's a junior person, I would still say, yep, sir, I'm the one that told Lieutenant Johnson that what he said was good to go, and you own that. I think the concern would be if you do empower them, that some people would say they would pass the buck down and say, "No, I didn't make that call. That was Lieutenant Johnson that made that call." So that just comes from, again, there are bad leaders that will do that. That is something that could be a second and third order effect of that if you allow it to in a poor command climate.
Do you have any memories of specific times where you maybe passed something down that was wrong and what kind of the outcome of that was?
Whew, that's a good question. You know, I think we all look at decisions we made in the military, and some that we probably regret in some way, shape, or form. And or could do better in some way, shape, or form. In my case, I mean, I had a kind of an extreme example. I had one of the Marines, a Marine that was. We were training to go deployed over to Iraq at the time when I was CO of First Recon, and we had a Marine that was killed in a training accident. One Marine didn't uh, check, mixed up live rounds with blanks, right? Now, again, I took full responsibility for it. There are things that I could have had in place as a commanding officer, some SOPs that would have potentially, you know, saved a Marine's life, right? So you have to take the ownership, and that's the exact right word for it. You have to have the ownership when things do go wrong. So yes, 100%. There are decisions that I know I made, and again, that is an extreme example of one, certainly. But those decisions you make every day, what do you invest in? Do you invest in the making sure the SOP is updated and refined, or do you invest your time in the training. Your time is the most valuable thing you have, and where you invest your time is what you have to figure out as a leader, right? And if you overlook one thing that maybe not doesn't seem that important, it can come up sometimes and bite you in the butt, And again, I think you want to give your Marines also the latitude. The Marines always going to want to focus on like training and doing the fun stuff, but there's a need to have a balance and do the behind the scenes stuff, the maintenance and get the SOPs built out and invest in that before you can do the fun stuff. And I think that's where maybe sometimes as a leader you might get that out of whack a little bit. And I think that's probably what happened to me a little bit. I was so focused on the mission and the training that maybe we let some of the behind the scenes policies and training maybe slide a little bit. So yeah.
To kind of unpack that example that you just gave, is that what the outcome of that particular circumstance was? Did you go back and revisit those policies, or what did
We
that look
did.
like?
I mean, we 100% did. Again, it was a chain of just weird things that happened that were all kind of one off. So it's hard to you couldn't put your finger on one thing. It was multiple breakdowns or just a very very strange circumstances to be candid, that how it occurred. But it made us do a big basically do a safety stand down and step back and look at all our policies, similar to what happens in the on the aviation side of the house, right? If you have if a helicopter goes down, you have a safety stand down, you look internally, you figure out the training, what was the problem, and dig into that. We had to do the same thing. So certainly it forced us to do that. It's unfortunate that it had to be an extreme incident that pushed us to do that. But yeah, we 100% looked at that and made changes to policies and did some things differently moving forward to, hopefully avoid that ever happening again. But, sometimes, and I don't mean this to be crass, but sometimes there are just weird circumstances that one thing that you could never write. You can't write a policy that covers everything under the sun, right? There are just stuff happens sometimes, and again, we could have done better. So I'm not trying to write off any kind of ownership of this by any means, but there's always things you can do better to tighten up and make sure people really understand policies and understand what they're doing. Vice just are they reading it? Are they really embracing it and doing it? And how do you measure that? And it can be tough. It can be tough.
As a senior leader, do you ever fully get okay with the balance of knowing that you may not have an SOP or a policy for everything, but knowing that you need to continue to proceed forward in the light of that uncertainty?
I think 100. I think yeah, 100%. And that's like what you're paid for is to make those decisions, those risk analysis decisions, right? That's what you're always kind of doing is you're evaluating the risk. So is do you have enough, because you're never going to have perfect information, right? We'd say that in the intel world all the time, right? You're never going to have 100% certainty that a analysis you made or decision you make, you're not going to have under 100% clarity what the enemy is going to do ever. So you have to make decisions with imperfect information. Now again, I think there is a level of information that is kind of red, yellow, green, right? We'll never do it when it's red. In yellow, there's risk. As long as I think a part of it is as long as you're identifying what those risks are. If you call it up front, hey, we know that we may be a little short in this area and there's some risk here. However, the mission is so important that we are going to take that risk. Or is it the mission's not that important? We're not going to take that risk. We're going to pause and we're going to fix this thing, right? So I think that's part of it is just really in the planning process, which the Marine Corps loves. How do you identify those risks, those gaps that you have, and then say, okay, are you as the commander willing to accept the risk that we've identified and move forward or not? And right, and that's what you're paid the big bucks to do is you take that on and make that decision and have the ownership for that. And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. That's just kind of sometimes it's like that's what leadership is. It's about experience, about it's like playing chess, right? And if you ever hear General Van Riper talk, it's about the more you can play chess, you can see the battlefield because you've done it so many times. You can kind of I can't predict the future, but what's going to happen hopefully ahead, right? So hopefully you've been as a Marine leader, the more decisions you make, the more times you've been in these situations, you hopefully have a better feel for what the outcomes are going to be and where it's okay or where it's affordable to take risk.
You spent a majority of your career in intelligence roles. How do you think that that shaped your decision making over time? And maybe you can talk about how it was when you came in and then throughout the iteration of those roles, how that maybe changed over time.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think the key thing about being intelligence in the intelligence field is that you have to rely on or be able to be a good writer. You have to be able to compress lots of information into a very short document to make an assessment, and you have to be willing to make a call. Right? I mean, the intel guy has to be able to say, I think, Commander, that you can or can't do this, or the enemy is going to do this or that, right? You can't be wishy-washy, right? So, I think when I came into the Marine Corps, certainly, I in my head I thought I was going to be an infantry, and I ended up having this opportunity to be a civilian, which is great. But and every Marine's a rifleman, and we get that certainly. And I think when you first get in, though, I didn't know how to write for effect. I didn't know how to influence it takes you a while to understand how the planning process or the decision making process inside the Marine Corps. And as an intel officer, you have to understand your role and what the commander needs. And that's also a challenge because every commander is going to be different, right? I worked for different bosses that wanted different things. They wanted information presented in different ways. Some want pictures, some want words, some want, whatever it may be, right? So again, I think that's something that over time you need to have those intel tools in the tool chest to be able to provide the commander the information he needs in a way that he can best digest it and then make a decision. Because you're not the decision maker when you're the intel officer, you're the staff guy, right? You're the one that's providing the information for them. So being able to do that, be able to kind of read people and understand how they process information is a big part of the job, which took me time to figure out. And then again, I think the real key of it is how do you condense multiple inputs? Whether it's SIG information, ELINT information. I mean, there's a myriad of satellite imagery. How do you take all these inputs, human reporting, and blend that in to make something that can be a useful product and be a value added for that commander, right? And that's hard. It's hard to condense 27 reports into a paragraph, which you usually get. That people's attention spans are somewhat short. And I think the Marine Corps in the military in general, I'll say this isn't a comparison between the military and Amazon. Most briefs you go in the Marine Corps or in the military are PowerPoint briefs. That's what you get in the military, a lot of PowerPoint, which is very PowerPoint deep, right? It's a bullet here, a bullet there. In Amazon, we write 6-page papers. So you have the ability to lay out your data and lay out your arguments. And I think we in the military could probably use or learn a little bit about that, about our decision making process to get a little more invested and put some more of the data behind the PowerPoint bullet, because PowerPoint bullets sometimes don't have much behind them. I think that's something that I saw over time that some people didn't know what they were talking about. They put the bullet up there, and then when it came down to it, they really had nothing. There was no data to back it up. And again, as an intel guy, you do have to rely on the data, on the facts that you were able to see or collect or analyze. And that's something that again took me time to kind of figure out that, coalesce all of that, and be able to be a value add to that commander.
I've heard the phrase brevity is the soul of wit. I'm curious how you think about the value of being able to condense something. I understand that as something that's anybody who can make something very simple probably understands it very well. Do you think that there's opportunity for people to hide behind information when they're allowed to expound to the nth degree?
I think it's easier to hide, like I said, we're only allowed to have one slide in a brief, and that's where you have to condense it down to, and you just have like 3 or 4 bullets on there. It's easy to hide behind that. Like when you have to provide a 6-page paper, in my opinion, that's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. The writing that I do now is a lot harder than in general the intel writing I had to do. Now that said, like I said, when you write a document that if you're writing an analysis that's going to go up to TIA or CIA or a higher level organization, you need to have the rigor behind that. And again, you have to take that 6-page paper and just pull out the one, cogent paragraph. That's super hard to do, and you have to know the topic very well to be able to do that. What is the most cogent piece of that 6-page doc? I think you can't hide behind that one. That one's going to be backed up by data. What you can hide behind are just PowerPoint bullets that there may not be much data behind them at all. It's just kind of a swag you put on there because that's all you have, and just all you're going to give people. So yeah.
Mhm. How do you think about the value of intelligence when it comes to decision making, maybe in general and or the military? I kind of am curious. You already had mentioned that every Marine is a rifleman, like first and foremost, and I see a distance there from working in intelligence to the field and where those decisions are like being made. Does everything kind of come back to intelligence at one point or another? Because where those actions are taken is based off of that.
In theory, that's what you hear that said often. Like I think intelligence drives operations, and that's how it's supposed to work in the cycle of things. That we are, the intelligence collected and analysis is made, and based on that, an operational plan is developed and then tweaked as because intelligence is constant. You're getting in more and more in, and that feeds the plan, and the plan continues to happen. I think the reality especially at lower level, for troops on the ground kind of thing, a fire team here or there, you're not always going to have intelligence resources available to you. You're it's just the scale of the decision making process is pretty small and pretty quick. So it's kind of like you see, you react, you do what you have to do. I think the more complex a situation is, the more critical intelligence becomes to drive the operation, and the more critical it is to think about second and third order effects. That okay, if you decide to go forward with this operation, what is going to happen, right? Because I think it was interesting when we first got into Iraq. Um, some of the analysis we did was very simplistic. It was like, oh, there's good guys and bad guys, right? And we kill the good guys, and we work with it. We kill the bad guys and work with the good guys, right? And that was, and Marines like that. Everyone likes simple, especially in the military. Like bad guys, good guys, kill them, easy day. The reality is, it's so much more complex, and it makes it hard for many leaders to make decisions in that complex world. Because the reality is, it's a sliding scale, right? Someone that you're trying to influence may be a friend today, but if you do something, he may be an enemy tomorrow, right? So it's not static, right? It's not black. You're not good or bad. You're kind of a. Some people are going to be 10% are good, always going to like you. 10% are bad, always going to hate you. Like 80% in the middle are sliding one way or the other based on power, right, or control, right? So you have to figure out, who is the most important person to you, because if you kill this person, that may make this person pissed at you. If you make a person happy because he's filling the void. So that it just becomes super complex. And I think the biggest thing is you need to be aware of it. As long as you're aware of it and you're making decisions that take that into consideration, then I'm good with that. As an Intel guy, I can't do more than that except advise you on what the outcomes could be if you decide to, hit that target. If you do it, if you're taking actions without considering that, that's a problem. That's when Intel is not driving operations. That's operations just for operations' sake. And that happens sometimes too. It's like, oh, we have a target, let's go kill them. And they don't really think about what that will mean in the bigger picture of things. So I think it's critical to have Intel drive operations. It just doesn't always happen because it's hard, and some people don't like to think about it. They rather we black and white is just much easier.
If you were to put yourself on the decision making part, you've got this intelligence, and I'm going to try and roughly try to draw some parallels to like real life here, or like people in their everyday lives more so. We've got imperfect information about whether we're going on a mission, we are in our personal careers, in our relationships. What is the best way that you found or a framework that you have for thinking about making the best possible decision with little or imperfect information?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I think in the real world, we try to do that all the time. At Amazon, we make decisions without perfect information all the time. A concept we talk about at Amazon, which I think is a good one to think about, is called two-way doors. So we talk about making decisions that are two-way doors. If you make a decision, it's a one-way door where you go in and there's no way to come back and unpack it. That's something you need to think about. But hopefully you can make a decision. So even if you make the decision, you have the ability to back through the door and try it again with what you've learned from that process, right? So don't burn the bridge behind you. Is I think what kind of the point of that, right? So if you make the decision, do your best to be able to have the ability to go back. It may slow you down, it may cost you a lot of money. That's okay if you learn from it. And I think that's part of what I love about Amazon is that ability to try new stuff, but try it fast and fail fast. So if you're going to fail, it's okay to fail. And people in the military don't like that concept. And it's interesting when I talk to folks sometimes in interviewing about talking about failure. But it's we I think at Amazon it's not like we embrace failure per se, but we understand that not everything is going to work. We're going to fail. But if you do fail, fail fast, learn from it, and try again. So that's what I would tell you. You can't let perfection be the enemy of the good. We talk about perfection can't be the enemy of the good. Where good enough is okay because perfection will take you a month. Good will take you a week. I'm good with good. Understand that if good doesn't work, we may fail and have built that in, then back out of it, take the lessons learned, and go from there. I mean, there's a great example in Amazon of the Amazon got in the cell phone business years ago, and it just went horribly. Fire phone, it didn't work. Right? It was we nobody bought them, nobody used them. It was a bad decision. But the technology in that phone, we backed, we lost, I don't know how many, lost some money on that decision back in the day, but they did take that, and it turned into tablets and other things other technology. So the technology was good, just the delivery of it was bad, right? So again, I think that's the thing you have to be able to do is, learn from your mistakes, take the good from them. If you do, don't be so stubborn that you're just gonna say, it's my decision. We're just gonna drive through and put our head down. You have to realize and like, you know what? I made a bad call. That's okay. We're going to stop. We're going to back it up. We're going to take the loss and we're going to take what we learned and we're going to go from there. Which is I think that's the very applicable lesson we see in the real world in the in the corporate world.
Well, in reality, too, would show that there's not a lot of decisions that you can't come back from. Like there's not a lot of those one-way doors. Life has way more two-way doors, but it's like, you want to go through it, but leave it open. Don't just slam the door behind you and burn it down and say, this is what we're going to do no matter what. And lock yourself into that and give yourself room to be wrong.
I think there are some decisions that are one-way doors. For example, Amazon, when we decide to build a headquarters somewhere, you do all the analysis, and then if you're invested, you're in, right? You can't we halfway built this campus, and we're gonna, like there are some big decisions that are one-way doors that you really can't back away from. Now you can maybe modify it or tweak it a little bit, but there are some things that are pretty, but they are the exception bites the rule. I think you're right. I think it's probably only a handful of those. And again, in any decision, to your point, you do want to have the ability to have thought through the second, third, or effects. If something isn't going right, how do you tweak it? There's a difference between tweaking a decision and totally backing away from it and saying that was a bad call. We're going to stop that and we're going to head in a different direction. I think they're kind of two different things. So yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about you getting out of the service.
Yeah.
And before we dive into really your role at Amazon and kind of what you're doing now, I know you held another job between getting out of the Marine Corps and coming to Amazon, but I want to hear what that transition was like for you. And we don't have to go too deep into it, but I'm curious what your thought process was re-entering like the workforce. And I also want to point out that you did 25 years in and you still went on to work. So many people I feel like think that they're gonna do 20 years and then get out and never work again.
Five kids will do that for you. So that's I have 3 in college and 2 in high school right now. So they don't feed themselves. So that's part of it. But
get the checkbook out.
Exactly. I tell you what, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, so as I was leaving the Marine Corps, I think for anyone, that I would, as anyone transitioning out, the key thing I have folks come to me all the time that are transitioning, say, "Hey, I'll do anything, anywhere. Let me work at Amazon. That'd be great." I'm like, "All right, the hardest part of transitioning is figuring out what you want to do, right? That's what you need to invest in, is figuring out what you want to do. And on the flip side of that is what you don't want to do, right? Figure out what you do want to do, figure out what you don't want to do. And the third piece is really, where do you want to do it, right? Those are kind of the things you have to kind of, figure out as you're leaving the military. Um, because again, for 25 years in my case, and for some others, 5, 10, 15, 20, your monitor, your detailer kind of told you what you asked. I would like to go here. They would tell you, that's great. I appreciate that. We think you're going to go here, so you didn't really, you were involved in the process, but you didn't own the process. When you're leaving the military, you own the process 100%. You're the one that's responsible for everything you're doing out there. So what I did and what I encourage anyone to do, and there's a TED talk on it. It's 50 cups of coffee, right? It's just talk to people, talk to your high school friends, talk to your college buddies, talk to your veterans or Marines, or anyone that's got out, any armed military community that's gotten out before you. Talk to people, because in the military, I know, I had friends of mine that worked in commercial real estate, for example. I, I mean, I knew, I guess I knew that means they sold buildings, right? But what is it like to be a day in the commercial real estate? What do you do? Do you have meetings? Do you, I mean, I had no idea, right? Just, people that were lobbyists, like what does that mean? You have dinner with people, and I didn't really know, like what that meant. I mean, it sounded like it could be kind of cool. I have no idea. So just have those conversations to figure out what jobs really are. What does it mean to be a program manager? What does that exact? It sounds kind of neat that you manage a program. I don't know. I mean, what does that mean? So I think that's the thing I would tell you, anyone that's in the transition process, is have those conversations. Those conversations will help you figure out, like, ooh, that sounded good on paper, but really that's what you do every day. I definitely don't want to do that, right? And part of it's, you want to work for the government or not work for the government, and that's a big decision for a lot of the military folks as well. Um, but if you can do that, if you go through that process and figure out what's going to give you your, going to jazz you up once you get out, then people like me can help you out, right? I will say that as well. But for me personally, I figured out that, hey, I wanted back in Tampa, so I got out of the Marine Corps. I finished up my '06 command. I was in Camp Lejeune. I had a change command in the morning. I retired in the afternoon and moved back to Tampa. I had been at Tampa from 9 to 12 down at SOCOM, and kind of fell in love with the area. And so I knew where I wanted to go. So that actually limited my options of what I wanted to do. But I knew that's where I wanted to go, mostly for my kids and high school age kids. I knew I didn't want to be in the government, didn't want to go back and do something Intel related, didn't want to do a DoD thing. And in my head, I wanted to do something in business. So I started trying to pursue business type roles, and that's who the interviews and the conversations I had more and more neck down to that. And there was some in construction, there was some in some consulting type worlds, but I ended up getting a job in a company that fabricated and installed fiber optic cable. And it was a great first job. Small company, 200 people, and my network helped me get that job. Right, those conversations are the ones that got me to that job. Right, so. And again, for 2 years, it was awesome. And my transition was probably easier than most, because I enjoyed having those conversations. I enjoyed having those 50 cups of coffee, or 50, glasses of beer, or whatever it may be. Sometimes having a beer is a better conversation in some cases. But I think that's something that so many veterans or transitioning veterans are scared of transition, because, and you probably heard me make this analogy before. It's like the Shawshank Redemption, right? People get institutionalized in the military. They get so used to doing the same things the same ways. Their uniform matters. They get told what to do in some cases, but they're very, very comfortable and very independent operating in that. All of a sudden, when you leave the walls of the institution, you're Brooksy, right? And you don't know how to. You have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. You don't know what to do. So it's scary, and I get that. And I think people also lose contact with their friends from high school and their friends from college and their friends, maybe they lose touch with that part of society, because their whole world becomes the military, which is great when you're in, but when you're trying to leave, it's hard. You have to you know, indoctrinate yourself into that life. So that's the investment you have to make as you leave, is getting back out, getting used to being in, the real world, if you will, and just start talking to people. And for me, it just worked out great. And again, networking is not a dirty word. You got to do it. It's what's going to networking and timing are what get you jobs more than anything else in the world. I'm convinced of that.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. There certainly is no end to the value in that, and no, you should start as early as you can. Really, I had another guest on the show that said that he talked about and was planning to get out the day that he joined, and I was like, wow, I wish that I would have taken that approach and started thinking about that. And didn't know that I was only going to do 4 years, but when you're preparing for those things early, there's really no amount of things that your pocket never gets full of those types of contacts or whatnot.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think that people say that all the time. Transition is continuing. It should be something you start and think about from day one. I know the reality is, not happening that way, but I think it's something that we need to look at. I mean, I think it's something people should do. They don't. They often or usually do not. But yeah, yep.
Well, and your outcomes aren't binary like they are in the military. And it's not completely black and white while you're in, but kind of. It is a weird feeling to be back sort of in control of your own destiny where you need to think about like you framed it, you want to look at all the options and then narrow it down rather than just trying to look at the scope of what's available to you. Because while you're in, whether you've got your MOS or your rating or whatever you want to call it, you have a very narrow sliver of what's even possible for you. So it's very easy to look at that wide range. But as soon as you're out, you've all of a sudden got, something this big, and you need to like kind of whittle that down by, like you said, by location, work remote, government job, and the pool of jobs that you're interested in. It compresses very quickly when you start asking those big questions.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I mean, again, that's what the process is. The process is necking that down to figure out, and also, I think another thing you need to consider in the process is, what's important to you, because I think there's now that sounds kind of silly, but like, in the military, you don't appreciate how much you have what I call the give back factor, right? You're doing something for your country where you are giving back every day. And you don't really even ask for people to say thanks, but you just do it and that's just part of the job. But when you leave it and you have a job where you're making cable, nothing against that, it's important, but there's just something missing, right? And is that going to be important to you? Do you need a job where you have to have that, or are you good? Like, you know what? I can find that as a volunteer. I just want to make money. And where are you in your life? What's important to you at that phase of your life? And then also looking at companies for what their culture is, because again, Amazon's culture is very different than JP Morgan's culture, than USAA's culture, or Boeing's culture, right? Culture matters, and that's something that, again, Marine Corps culture mattered. I joined the Marine Corps because I wanted to be in the Marine Corps. Join the company where you're going to be a good fit culturally, because if you're not, you're probably going to leave sometime pretty soon and not going to be happy with it. And if you only come for a company and work for for a year, that stinks for you and it stinks for me, because I have to hire somebody else. It's expensive to hire somebody new and train somebody up. So, make the investment as best you can on the front end to find a place where you're not only operationally happy, but culturally happy.
It sounds like you knew going into working at Amazon that that was going to be a cultural fit for you. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with what's valuable to ask there is start figuring those things out as quickly as you can, because it's not just this yes or no. You have the ability to dictate what jobs you want to work at by what's important to you. Again, you're now that you're out, you have the ability to choose who your employer is and choose how you commute every day and all of the other things that go into that culture and work for something that matters to you, whether it's, higher calling and purpose, whether it's money, any of those things.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's all part of the process, all part of the transition process. The more you, again, like I said, the more you can figure out what you want to do, and what you want to do includes all of those things, right? It's not just figuring out the job. It's figuring out all the supporting stuff that goes with that. It's sometimes even more important than the job itself. 100%.
Mhm. Well, and working to find those things out as quickly, that fail quickly mentality. You
Yes,
can,
definitely.
by asking somebody, networking with somebody, reading a book about a specific career type or whatnot, you're going to be able to find out those answers much more quickly rather than committing to working a job and just finding out.
Yep, agreed. 100% agreed. Yep.
Will you talk about your position at Amazon right
Sure.
now? You are a senior manager overseeing military talent and acquisition. You started in 2016. Talk about what that title means, what your responsibilities are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, happy to. Yeah, so I started Amazon like a little over 6 years ago in 2016. My role came about. So Jeff Bezos went to the White House back in May of 2016. He made a pledge back then to hire 25,000 veterans and military spouses over a 5-year period. At that point in time, to be candid, Amazon did not have much of a veteran-focused hiring program. We did hire veterans, but it was kind of ad hoc. We didn't really track it. It was just kind of all over the page. So Jeff Bezos goes to the White House, as you might imagine. That made Amazon realize, hey, we better, kind of put some processes in place behind this. How are we going to measure it? How are we going to track it? What are we going to do to scale our programs? So I came on board soon after that, about 4 months after that. I came on board, and with the the focus on building out Amazon's veteran hiring programs. There's some specific programs that I built, but I think the bigger thing to understand is not only I came there with the focus on hiring, and that's what I do. So and I'm not a recruiter. I'm a program manager. So I run our Skill Bridge programs, which focus on transitioning veterans during the last 6 months of active duty, apprenticeship programs, direct hiring, events on base or virtual events. We have an artificial intelligence-based talent matching tool. So any veteran can go in there and enter in their MOS, their time in service, their rank, their clearance, and much other stuff, and it'll tell you what's the best fit for you at Amazon. All that stuff, and all I do is focused on that piece of things. And that piece of things is very important. But our team is bigger than that. I think that's probably the bigger concept. So I've grown the team from just focusing on the hiring piece. Now I'm part of a larger military affairs team that not only focuses on hiring veterans, we have a second pillar of the team focused on retaining our veterans. So how do we make sure once we get you here, we keep you? So mentoring programs, upskilling programs. What can we do to kind of be our own career navigator, monitor, detailer for veterans at Amazon to help them stick around once they get here? And we have a third pillar on our team focused on community engagement. In particular, we focus on veteran unemployment, veteran mental health, veteran hunger, veteran homelessness, and veteran mental health. Those three in particular. So it's been great to see Amazon's investment over time from, okay, hiring is all we got to do 6 years ago, to, okay, let's grow because we've done a good job of hiring. Let's make sure we're now retaining our veterans. Or you got to retaining our veterans. So a job of like engaging our veterans in the community. So at the end of the day, the thing to take away is that the commitment we've made from program management level is huge. I think we have 16 or 17 people that are solely on this team focused on military programs. And then we have recruiters within our different organizations. So Amazon Web Services was our tech side of the house. Amazon Operations, which is all the stuff to get a package delivered to your house. Amazon Studios, Amazon Labs, Amazon Movies, or Amazon Music, and down the line, right? All have their own investment in veterans in some way, shape, or form. And that's what my job basically is, to be an internal consultant to help all the different pieces and parts of Amazon make sure they have programs focused on developing veteran and military spouse hiring pipelines. So that's it. Been great stuff.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive and like it covers a lot of different things. I'm assuming that Amazon has probably looked at why veterans are such good hires for the company. And I think that anybody who has served will just pay the very, like, it's very easy to give the lip service of like, oh yeah, they've got this leadership experience, they've got work ethic, they've got all these things, just the usual stuff. I'm curious if you have seen like KPIs or metrics that talk about or show within Amazon, hey, this is why veteran hiring is so important, and not just like, it's not a lip service thing from a large company saying we're going to hire veterans to give back. The veteran community doesn't need to be gived back to. They're highly qualified people that are very great at all of these things. And so I just am curious if you've seen something that shows actually why they're great hires to make?
The thing I would start with, to be candid, is if you look at Amazon's leadership principles, and our leadership principles are what we base all of our hiring decisions on. They are very similar to you know things that you will see in the Marine Corps or in the military as a whole, right? And that's what when we interview people, we interview based on your ability to demonstrate Amazon's leadership principles. Those include things like bias for action, deliver results, ownership, right? Those are things that we value at Amazon. You need those skills at Amazon to be successful. So clearly, a part of what you do in the military is going to translate over very well to be successful at Amazon. Who better than to deliver results, have a bias for action, to show ownership than someone in the military, right? So that's kind of the surface level of it. What we're looking for, veterans have. So there is part of it. I think another piece of it, and what I look at almost, I didn't say more than other things, or what I've seen veterans bring to the table, which is awesome, is we bring diversity of thought. Now, again, veterans are diverse from a racial component, which is also something that is helpful because we want to make sure we represent a very diverse population at Amazon across the board. But diversity of thought is the thing that I've keyed in on. Again, we don't measure that necessarily. I just see it when we're in meetings and how we problem solve. What we do well in the military is plan and look at ways that we're making decisions and analyze decisions. Right, good people that are good at doing that in the military are going to do well here because we don't have groupthink. We are not afraid to express our opinion. We are, I think veterans, look at problems from a way that is different than someone that has never been in the military. When we think about things like risk and we think about second and third order effects, those are stuff those are words we are very comfortable with that are not things that other people often bring to the table. So that to me has been what I think stands out from non-veterans is that diversity of thought. And when you're in a room with veterans and how to look at problems is something that is respected and desired by non-veterans here at Amazon. So that I think that's a big piece of it to me that is seeing what make veterans successful. And the data I can't put a KPI on that. What I can tell you is that veterans, while their attrition rates in the first couple years are worse than their non-veteran peers, and which is not uncommon across any industry. Veterans in their first year and a half or so typically leave faster than non-veterans, from companies. However, what I can also tell you is if veterans make it to the 18-month mark, they promote faster than their peers. So again, the data is that if veterans can get over that hump of transition, they're going to promote faster, right? That to me is important and something that I like to highlight to people that are looking to hire veterans about what hey, the data shows that if you bring them on and you can help onboard them well and give them a good experience, they're going to perform for you and promote for you. So yeah.
You likely aren't looking at individual resumes or doing direct hires yourself, but I'm curious if there has been a standout trend that you have seen that veterans coming in and applying to Amazon or maybe anywhere else that you think really makes an individual stand out before they even come to the interview, or vice versa. Something that is like, hey, this is a big red flag, this is a no go. Just kind of maybe resume best practices or.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do see. I still look at resumes every day.
Okay.
Not a lot of them, but I do. Well, I mean, a few of them every day, and not more because I'm making sure if I send them on to someone, I want to make sure that they're not that they're well done, that they're not just that they're well done at the end of the day, right? And what does well done look like? And I do, and I'm part of a virtual webinar that we host every other week where we talk about resumes, we talk about interviewing, we talk about the hiring process at Amazon. So for resumes in particular, and again, I see a lot of bad ones every day too. Everything, and this is not just veteran focus, this is just in general for any resume that I want to see. Everything we do at Amazon is based about data and outcomes. right? So if you write a resume, if I get a veteran resume, and I get veteran resumes all the time that are pretty bad, and those and because they're used to writing in fit rep bullets or OER bullets, and they'll put on their resume was responsible for the command safety program. I'm like, okay, what? I have no idea what that means. How big was the program? Did the program improve or did it worse? Did safety get better? If so, by how much? Did you win an award? Did you what? So what? So again, just these veterans are just bad, generic bullets they pulled off of their OER. They slap it on their resume, and it says nothing at all. So again, I need your resume if it's gonna be successful. You're competing against probably other veterans, but you're competing against internal Amazon people that may want to move into that job, as well as competing against civilians that want that job, right? So you need your resume to stand out. To make it stand out, you have to have data and you have to talk about outcomes. So it's what is the so what? And again, they write about your team, part of a team that, I'm like, well, did you do it? I want the guy that did it. Was it the team or was it you? If it's not you, then give me the guy that did it was responsible for the innovation and made it happen. So again, we're just veterans are pretty bad. Well, and to their, I try to be nice. I mean, I get that for years you were taught to defer credit to the team, and that's just how we do. And we're bad writers in the military in so many cases because we do get so used to doing PowerPoint. So but there are resources out there. Hire Heroes USA is the one that I think is the best for resume review. But again, it's about data and it's about outcomes and making it clear. Like for every job opening at Amazon, there are a list of basic qualifications, probably 4 or 5 basic qualifications. Basic qualifications are non-negotiable. So if it says, MBA required, if it says, advanced SQL skills required, they're required. Like you're going to get rejected if you don't hit all the basic qualifications. But I have people send me resumes all the time that don't even come close to hitting the basic qualifications. Like this, don't waste your time and mine, right? Is what I tell people and make it clear up front. Like in the start of your resume, I would make it clear saying, hey, transitioning veteran with 10 years program management experience that is well versed in Excel and SQL, looking with a top secret clearance that looking for a job in your organization, whatever it is. Hit all of that right up front to make it clear you meet all the basic qualifications. Make it easy for that recruiter to say yes. If they hunt through your resume and find 2 years here and a certification there, they may miss it. So that's my advice to that. I look at them, it gets me a little riled up because I see so many and so many that are not that good. So yeah.
I could hear that voice fluctuation. I
Yeah,
was like, oh, this might have hit a sensitive spot. If I would have known that you spent a lot of time looking at resumes, what I should have done is sent you a copy of it beforehand, and then we could have like did a roast of my resume on this call. That would have been funny. No, I think that's really good feedback, and I think the general consensus for military and even some of the organizations that can kind of help, it's just like, okay, we're gonna use these really big words and like, responsible for this program or whatever. That doesn't mean anything. Like, say, hey, here's what I did, here's what I was responsible for, and here's how it got better and the skills I used to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's all you got to say. And in like 2 sentences, it doesn't take a lot. Make it simple and make it straightforward. Like you said, make it easy for
Yeah.
the recruiter to say yes.
100%. That's what it's all about. Yep. 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 Ah, yes. Yeah, pet peeve of mine. So yeah, but yes, we talk about that. And I try to push that for veterans and make sure they know that stuff. And again, there's a lot of resources out there. That's the thing. I get that it can be hard to translate your military experience into civilian speak, but there are people that can help you do that because you can. It is very translatable if someone kind of helps you, kind of guide you through the process. It's very very doable.
What do you think that the largest misconception is that veterans have about re-entering the workforce? And that could or could not have to do with resume specifically, but what do you think it is that people are thinking about that is just wildly wrong?
I don't know if it's wildly wrong. I think the biggest issue is that veterans are just scared, right? They're scared of being dependent. And that's what I see where veterans fail more often than not. Or one of the biggest issues why veterans fail is that they don't like to ask for help, right? I think in the military, we are trained to be strong or to not show weakness, right? And if you show weakness, that's a sign of failure for many in the military, right? So you learn how to do things yourself. You be very self, um, you know, you're independent, right? So when you leave that behind, and you leave the ability to function without asking for help to a place where, like Amazon, that is super high paced. We have our own language, our own, we do things in our own different way. And, Amazonian is a way we talk about being Amazonian, right? I mean, it's hard for people to adjust to that. And and many times when I see veterans, because they're not willing to raise their hand and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to do this. They just like, you know what? I'll figure it out. I'm going to treat it like a deployment. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to grind through it. And 6 months from now, I'll have it. Well, you won't. You won't have it at Amazon, right? It will beat you, and you will leave if you don't ask for help. The culture here is one that we accept. We can basically expect that if you need help, you need to ask. Like, we're not going to come up and say, "Oh, Bo, looks like you're having a bad day. Come have a cup of coffee." Like, it's not. We expect you're knowing what you're doing and you're delivering results. If you have questions, ask. We will help. And people are very generous with their time when you ask. But you need to ask. And if you try to do it all on your own and try to be, independent, instead of saying, I just don't know, can you please help me out here? That's the thing I've seen as being the biggest, challenge or weakness that veterans have when they're trying to leave the military and coming into the civilian sector.
Well, and I think that asking for help also helps manage expectations too, because it's going to be people's first inkling when they give you an assignment to say, and if they don't hear from you, they're going to assume that the outcome is good and you got it handled. By asking for help, you not only manage expectations about the outcome of your product, like it might not be that good if I'm having to ask for help, but it also allows them to intervene early. And like that comes back to, again, something you said earlier, like fail early and quickly,
Yep.
and figure it out so that you don't get down the road and people are relying on you for like a specific deadline or completion of a task. And all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we're actually way back here on step one because we didn't know.
Yep. No, 100%. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. That's they should do, but they don't always do. But yeah.
You've laid out a couple of the things about Amazon that has and how it aligns with military culture, work ethics, values, all of those things. Aside from those things, why is Amazon a place that vets should consider working at? Maybe talk to that culture a little bit more, or anything else that has been extremely beneficial to you as a transitioning service member.
Yeah, and this is not necessarily, again, this is not necessarily veteran centric. This is Amazon centric. And what I've loved about being here is that Amazon is very good about and willing to try new things and beta test things, right? They're willing to experiment all the time. And I love that attitude of innovation. We talk about being innovators all the time, right? And I think, for me, there was certainly some frustration in the military where, you had senior leaders that would often say, hey, we need outside the box ideas. And, Lieutenant Higgins has this outside the box idea. Like, are you crazy, Lieutenant? Get back in your box. We really didn't value outside the box thinking in the military, in my opinion. I mean, there's just a few people, here and there probably, but relatively speaking, it's like, hey, just conform to the system. We know what we got here. Be part of the machine, and that's what kind of the military need. And I get there's a reason for that, right? When you're trying to have this discipline you need and the structure you need, there's a need for some of that. But what we didn't have, and I think one of the things that so many people in the military would like to have more of is that freedom to try new things out, freedom to, just to experiment. And being here has opened that possibility for me. I always have, 4 or 5 different beta tests or partners that we're working with to try new things, from a hiring side, 'cause and like the military spouse hiring is one that we've invested in heavily this year. And I have some ideas about doing better for student veterans and National Guard focused veteran hiring. And, again, my boss is like, yeah, let's try it out, and if it doesn't work out, again, fail fast, learn from it and pivot from there and find where we can do that kind of thing. That to me has been super refreshing. And I've really enjoyed just the ability and the willingness from Amazon, from the leaders to be able to always be willing to invest in and try new things. That's been pretty cool.
How do you think that we can take that same idea and maybe apply it to our personal lives? I think that coming out of this service, it's very easy to be very rigid about our lives in general. And all of a sudden you have all of this flexibility and almost that forces you to almost like tighten up even more when in reality you have this whole host of options and you can literally do anything. And that's part of why this podcast exists, is to encourage and inspire people to talk to new people, explore new career opportunities, and really find the thing that you're supposed to be doing with your life.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. That's the thing I said before. The hardest part veterans have is leaving the institution behind, and it's because they're scared, right? It's not like they have the skill sets, and they don't know it. They don't believe in themselves, right? So how do you develop self confidence? How do you, because you could be the guy that's you're able to go lead troops into combat, and you would do that every second of every day, but the idea of like putting on a suit and having to go into a cubicle and brief somebody on that like scares the crap out of you, right? It's weird to me, but I kind of get it. It was also scary, So yeah, the you have to be willing to put yourself out there and not be the expert, because you do become the expert on certain things in the military, right? And you can get by on your expertise and your corporate knowledge, if you will allow you to walk into any room and be able to talk fluently on that. You have to just accept the fact that you're not that guy, right? You have to I'm not that guy, but you have to and invest in your learning and development, and you understand where you may have gaps, and close those gaps, whether it's by classroom training or by talking to people, and just put yourself out there. And that's what it's always about. It's about, you can't be afraid to put yourself out there and for people to tell you no, or to tell you that's wrong. And I think we just get into this place as veterans where we become afraid to do that. And until you can do it, until you take that leap, of faith, you're not going to reach the full potential that you have. There's no secret sauce to it. I mean, it's hard, and I get that it's hard, and I get that it's scary, but that's what it takes at the end of the day to be successful. Is you have to be willing to just take that jump and believe in yourself, right? And again, hopefully with your network, to your point though, I mean, you're taking that leap, but there are people there that are dying to help you, people like me, people like yourself. There's almost too many veteran resources out there to tap into to help you make that leap, but finding out the one that works for you, that's going to help you, get to where you want to go, is kind of on you, and just again, have 50 cup of coffee, talk to people. Don't be afraid to say, hey, look, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I'm scared, I think this is what I want to do, but if you can't take that first step, it's baby steps. You can't, if you can't take that first step, you're never going to get there. It's a crawl, walk, run thing. And, I've been able, I mean, we all go through it, and some just get through it faster than others. Some babies walk in 6 months, some take them 18 months, it takes it takes the pace you're at to kind of figure it out.
Beau, this conversation has been extremely high value, and I've learned a lot. I think that this conversation will be extremely valuable to others as well. If there's one thing that they take away from this chat today, or something you haven't said, what do you think that every vet ought to hear?
You can do it. I've done it. You've done it. We've all been through it. Like, there have been millions of veterans that have made this transition and felt like you did. I mean, whether you're, like I said, from a private to a general, we're all scared. We all have to make that leap, and it's not easy for anyone. So you're not alone, right? And that's probably the most important thing to understand, right? That there are people to help you. There are tons of resources out there. You're gonna make mistakes. It's okay to fail. Learn from the failure and reattack. And those core values you had in the military are going to help you down the line. But you're gonna have to, scrape your knee a few times before you get there. And that's like, this is how it is.
Awesome. Beau, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Your listenership helps me better educate people like you and the rest of our nation's military, both past and present, on building a successful life outside of military service. If you're looking for more ways the top vets are leading more effective lifestyles, building businesses and using the resources designed specifically for you, press here for a selection of some of the best clips. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date, and I will be talking with you soon.